So I remember, I I don't recall exactly how old I was. I must have been, I'm just referencing the age of my kids and how old I must have been, maybe 7, 8, maybe. So I grew up in Romania, which I was born in Romania, which was communist at the time, when we were lived there. And I must have been around 8, 7, 8 years old. And uh, my mother had asked me to go upstairs. We lived in an apartment block. So if you imagine kind of Eastern Bloc countries with like the big apartment buildings, and we owned the unit, like it was a condo type setup, I guess. And my mother had given me a cloth bag to go upstairs to the neighbors and get something, and to not talk to anyone, and to just go do this errand and then come back down. And and we didn't have there weren't elevators, so I just went into the stairwell and walked up. And of course it's very yeah, it's a stairwell in an Eastern Bloc country. It's not well lit, it's cold, it's uh not not luxurious by any stretch. And so I walk upstairs, I knock on the door, the lady comes out, she puts something in my bag, I go back downstairs, I give it to my mom. I didn't see anyone, no one asked any questions, and my mom takes it out and it's a piece of meat wrapped in paper. And I'd forgotten the story for the longest time, and I just remembered actually this morning. But as I look back on my childhood, it really was like growing up in scarcity, because there wasn't, we had to. I remember my parents lining up for bread and me lining up for bread, with my mom when we were little, just standing beside her. And sometimes we'd get there and there'd be none left, or just very little choice, or lining up for toilet paper, things were rationed. There just wasn't an abundance of anything really in grocery stores. I remember Christmases where my dad worked for a tourism company, so they would get things like coffee and bananas and oranges. And around Christmas, it was a big treat to get oranges and coffee and bananas. And so this is the visual of like really living in scarcity and not enoughness, but we also had an abundance of, I was going to say, like, it's not even ingenuity, it's just there's always treats around. Like my grandmother baked and my mom baked, and there was always happiness and community and family and joy and laughter. And like it wasn't, there's just such a dichotomy, such a stark contrast between what happened outside of our home and what happened inside of our home. But that's what I grew up in. And just lots of I think just lots of pressure, lots of uh like you couldn't walk down the street with like there's always this threat of someone stopping my parents, as an example, and asking to see what's in their bags and where did they get the thing. And uh, there's things that were purchased under the table, so to speak, right? Like on the black market, and like, well, where did you get the coffee, or like, where did you get the meat, and where, like, what, so there's always this fear, this sense of fear as well, I think, that I recall when we were growing up. And then finally, when I was 10, my parents decided to defect. Um, and I thought we were going on a holiday with my sister and my mom and dad. And so we had this beautiful car, which was also not a thing for most people, but we drove a lot during those few weeks. I remember driving a lot and thinking, this is not the funnest holiday. Like we'd stop a couple of times for ice cream, but we just seemed to drive all the time. And finally we got to the border, and that was a very tense situation that's ingrained in my mind forever. And then we stayed in a refugee camp for a week ish, and then we stayed in Austria with. So I lived in Austria for about a year, and I went to school there, and I repeated the grade because I couldn't speak German. By the end, I did speak German. And then we came to Canada. Obviously, I'm skipping a bunch of steps because you'd be here forever. But that that experience, I think, was just really formative for me in terms of, being like, I will never be not a choice. I will never be dependent on anyone. I will never, uh, like, I'm gonna take care of myself. And and for me, the answer to that was getting an education. It's the whole reason my parents defected, um, and and building wealth.
Mm.
Did both of those things. So check, check, and here we are, and obviously I'm skipping a lot of steps, but that was such a foundational time for me, and I think even when we came, just seeing my parents, um, work so hard to provide for my sister and I, like, they would have been in their mid-30s, I think, when they came, so if you imagine, like, in your mid-30s with 2 little children to start all over again in a new country that you where you didn't speak the language, and you basically had to start from the very beginning.
Mhm.
So just this great sense of responsibility as well, I think, towards that and honoring their journey and not being frivolous with the opportunities that we were given. And this sense of wanting to pay it back and wanting to take care of them should they need to. They don't need to. They've done very well. Um, but I, I just had such a tremendous respect for money and what it can do and what it took for them to earn it and holding on to it and saving it and being a good steward of it. Yeah, that was that's how I got here.
Thank you. You're, I actually personally just joined your mentorship, and I'm so grateful. And it's called Wealth Bravery. And I just want to say thank you for being brave, because I I challenge people on a deep, deep level, but I knew the first time I met you, it wasn't what you were going to teach me, it's who you are. And I could see your passion. I could feel your passion. And I'm just so grateful that you were like, "I don't wanna do this. I don't wanna do this." And I was like, "I'm telling you right now, I know there's something inside of you of a deeper why." It's, we see the not you in general, but like all the marketing, the riches, everyone's like, "I wanna be a millionaire. I want all this money." And then, we sell like, "Be present with your children 24 hours a day, do all the things," and people are trying to figure it all out. And at the end of the day, whatever got us to where we are, there's a deep desire inside of me that we have both very different paths and life experiences, and yet same intention and purpose. And money is a resource that changes lives. And is it the all and everything? Absolutely not. But you have seen firsthand resources change lives. And, we're still human. But when you can go to bed at night going, I don't worry about food, I don't worry about shelter, I feel safe, I can take care of people. Um, I have worked with women for I don't want to say so long, but it's been over a decade, and I've had my own struggles. And I hear them say, I want more time, I want more energy, or I want to build my business, I want to make more money, or I'm making good money. I know you talk about this a lot. You're like, you're making really good money, but your money isn't making money. And there's a next level, right? Like, we've fought so hard to figure out how to make our own money. And it's like, great. I feel like you're like the next level, which is like, you're making good money. Now let's rest a little bit, take a deep breath, and have your money make money, because you're already on the path of wanting to become financially independent. Let's just make it a little bit easier for you. And you also give people opportunities. So I would like to know, and now we don't need to be super emotional about it, but like,
Great.
yeah, yeah. We know the desire and the why behind it, right? Just what you're observing, the hustle, um, the challenge. How did you get into the work you do now when it comes to private, I'm saying it's private investing, you might call it something else, but, like, what's your career path?
Yeah, so I was trained as an engineer, mechanical engineer. I didn't really work as an engineer for the majority of my career. I really went into more commercial deal delivery, ventures, corporate back ventures kind of thing, in the energy space. And so I've always been very um, savvy and strategic and all about optionality and really about leverage and how do you make things easier and do things in a smart way that gives you lots of optionality where you have, you're at absolute choice in life and in your career and all the things. I would say that's been like one of my biggest values is to have choice and to have freedom and to be like, I am not beholden. I am nobody, nobody owns me with anything. Like I'm at choice here. And so building wealth was a big part of that. And I started doing that as soon as I'd been working since I think I was like 13 or 14 is when I got my first job. I've been investing since I began my career over 20 years ago. And I started off investing in, in the stock market as most people do. And as you build a certain level of wealth, options become more abundant in terms of where you can invest and how you can make an impact and invest more in alignment with your values instead of just passively. Um, and so I had my kids pretty late in life. So I had my daughter. I have a daughter and a son. I had them in my early 40s, and um, I prioritized my career for the longest time and my wealth. And finally, I was like, okay, like there's enough that I don't ever have to work again if I choose not to. Um, and it's really nice just to be able to have that freedom with my kids and to be home and to do all the things. Right now, they would argue that mommy still works very much, but I got into alternative investments, so angel investments. I invest in startups at the pre-seed and seed level up to Series A, venture capital, private equity. I just have this unquenchable curiosity and deep interest in that whole, the private market world. The returns are, in many cases, above and beyond what you would get in public markets. If you look at how the ultra high net worth invest, less than 20% of their assets are in public markets. Um, how you construct your investment portfolio is going to have the biggest impact on your returns. So if you're fully weighted on stocks, once you're kind of beyond the first 1, 2, 3, 4 million, it doesn't really make sense to have all your stuff in public equities necessarily, right? And so it's just a really incredible world for diversification in terms of getting uncorrelated returns on your portfolio, in terms of getting higher returns, and then also in terms of just being able to invest in other women, which is a big value of mine. So I do a lot of angel investing and female founded startups. That's a whole other conversation why that's important, I think, for women to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the work that I do with women today is around I would say it's really around building your own ecosystem. It's not just an investing conversation that we have. It's really around what is your number? Are you clear on that? Do you even know where you are? Do you know what your net worth is? Do you know what your target is? Why is that your target? I think there's this, especially in the online space, there's a lot of this more is more and celebration of high cash months. And um, it's just a really skewed view when you take a very macro view, a very expanded view of the world and how most people live, and this idea of celebrating. And there's nothing wrong with celebrating. Like I think it's fabulous, it's amazing. And I always wonder, for someone who's making 50K, 100K cash months, like what are you doing with that? And it's also skewed in the sense that cash in does not equal wealth. It's not net income, it's gross. And so what were your fees and what were your costs? And it's just um, it's a very glorified way of looking at money and what is possible to be done with money that is in many ways, I think, misleading for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So the point is that you can build absolute financial freedom with on 100K a year, earnings. You don't need to, and if you're doing that in a month, like you should be a multi millionaire, but most people are not, right? And so just this piece around women understanding the world of money, financial literacy, how money works. What are you building? Is it exitable? Um, is this the lifestyle that you want to be living from one launch to the next? It's a very hustle culture. Like I mean, several kind of higher end masterminds and the conversations behind the scenes of some of these women who are having these really high cash months is quite sad to be honest. Because they haven't built a level of wealth that creates a level of freedom and time freedom that allows them to take a breath, and really explore, is this still what I want to be doing? Do I want to take some time off? Do I want to have another child? Do I want to spend more time with my kids? None of that is possible if you haven't built a level of financial security where your investments are supporting your lifestyle, that it's all on you.
Yeah, I talk a lot about time and energy freedom, and that's exactly what you're alluding to here is you can have all the money in the world in your bank account, but if you're hustling to get it, or you're like, okay, if I stop, it's gonna dry up.
Yeah.
That's not sustainable. And this year will be 11 years since I was diagnosed with a stage 4 cancer. And I remember that moment. I was in startup in my business, and my husband was barely paying the bills. And so I was like, I don't have the time and energy under my belt to gain momentum and be like, we're going to be okay, or even the correct resources in place. Um and so that always plays in the back of my mind, like the what if scenarios, and not living from a place of fear, but just the reality of life. Like you could be in a really, really good place. Yesterday, a friend was like, my brother passed away, and that's not expected. And it's like, how can we become so resourced so that one, we can help ourselves, we can help our family, we can make sure that the people around us are so nurtured and taken care of because of we fed ourselves and we're nurturing and we're giving out, but the well-resourced woman who is doing this for herself as well. And so it's one thing to know these things and to do them. It's another thing to say, I want to give access to women in particular
Mhm.
who would never even have access to this regardless. So I'm curious what you see beyond fear. It's another thing to say, ladies, whether it's your money or somebody else's money, whether you're making it or not making it, like to me, it's like nutrition and your health. Like it should be a foundational skill. Like every human needs to know this.
Yeah.
Like you need to learn to feed yourself. So where do you see women get really scared about, like, they're at the point where they're like, "I've done all the work to make the money, I'm making the money, I'm generating the cash." What scares them to go to the next level of investing at this?
It's really interesting because I think that a lot of women that have been quite successful in the online or any space really, but the online space in particular, there's a different energy and a different level of belief system and self belief that's required to invest your money. I think a lot of women are very comfortable or have gotten comfortable with investing in themselves, and it's almost become and I see it with myself. Like I mean, when I was in corporate and my path up to my first million, I just did it on my own. I did it through investing, the power of compounding. Like it's actually quite, you don't have to work that hard. You put your money to work and then it works for you. And then you go do live your life. Like I traveled, I did all sorts of sorts of incredible things. This online space can be quite insidious and making you it's marketing, right? It's like selling and marketing and makes you believe that you need the next thing. And honestly, if your sole goal was to become financially free, you wouldn't need half the things that you're purchasing, right? You would just be like, I'm going to be really good at being a really good business owner. I'm going to, you know,
Mhm.
earn a revenue and then I'm going to invest that and I'm going to live within my means. And as opposed to this flexing for, Instagram thing that a lot of people do. And then it requires you to earn more and then it requires you to, it's just like this vicious cycle. It's just like, it never stops. So I think, when I speak to some of the women who are in this like higher earning bracket, there's this real fear around one, just not understanding, but two, like not understanding investments. I think just like not trusting anyone outside of themselves in the sense of, when I invest in a founder, it's like the kind of investing that I do, and it's with a small portion of my portfolio, but it's a real it's a bet on the founder, on the business. It's illiquid for 5 to 7 years. It's not super transparent in terms of what is happening with the business. In this case, that's the nature of investing. Like you buy some equity in a company, and the company founders and the team do their thing, and they'll have an exit, and you'll get your capital returned. And you know that it's a real switch from being able to log into your savings account or your checking account and seeing all the money there.
Mhm.
It's a false sense of security, because if you look at $1 million, like what $1 million would have bought in 1990, and I still remember 1990, it's you would need 2.25 million today.
Right.
So I think people just don't understand inflation. They don't understand the power of compounding. They believe that just because they can log in and see it in an account, that it's safe, that it's there. And then so they make bets that are less risky, less return, more accessible, and those kinds of investment products are lower return, because they're less risky, like risk reward. But if you understand what you're doing and you educate yourself and you know how to position your portfolio so that you have some assets in more risky things and some that you need, in the next 9 to 18 months, for
Mhm.
example, for an opportunity or an emergency, you have that in a more liquid account, like meaning more accessible. It's being able to also uh, create the structures and the frameworks for your money that you have in place for your business, right? It's the point is not like, otherwise you're hoarding it. And but even when we talk about energetics, it's like, a pond that is not that's stagnant is like not good. It's it's gonna get all icky, and that's
Yeah.
what you're doing with money essentially, right? When you're hoarding it, really is what you're doing when you're holding on to it in a savings account because you think it's safer, you know.
Yeah, stagnant, like you just
Yeah,
said, stagnant water is going to become essentially diseased. Like, you have to keep it flowing, you have to keep it
yeah,
moving,
yeah.
the ecosystem. And when you were just talking, um, it's interesting because in the last few years, I have been purposely trying to remove myself from the coaching industry, like just observing the rooms I'm putting myself in, the groups. I don't agree with a lot of it. And when people come to me, especially post COVID, um, they're like, I bought this, I bought this, I bought this, or, I've lost trust. And I'm like, but the reality is you lost trust in yourself a long time ago. And that is the goal here, is to return home to yourself. And it's not about requiring more information. It's about learning to become the type of person that achieves the desired outcome. And that requires action. That requires implementation. That requires feeling the feelings of like, I failed or I could have did that better, like leaning into this rather than, I call it, walking around the pool. Like, you're like, I want to go swimming, but you just keep walking around the pool. You have to jump in and be like, oh shit, I can't swim. Great. Swim to the edge and get back out, learn some skills, get back in. And it's like, that is what life is about. And so, as you were talking, what I'm hearing is we become so habitual in our identity, and we buy into the cultural conversation of like, oh, well, this is what it is, this is how it's always been, or this is how my mother was, or my grandmother, or this is what my family story is, or people in my industry don't make this much money. And it's like, Yeah, but like what you're saying is you don't need to make $1,000,000 to get your money to make money. You can be the teacher, you can be the whatever. It's learning another skill that yeah, it's going to be emotionally uncomfortable because you have to think differently. You have to hold a different identity in order to develop that. And I come from a different industry, like my background's in social work. So, you know, it's like you are front lines and you are give, 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 and you are in there with people. And people don't get into social work to quote unquote make money. But
Yeah.
just imagine what you can do with the resources you have to learn an additional skill. You can give back so much more.
And you were in the conversation earlier this week, right? I brought in a founder who's running her just closing her round. It's a $5 million fund, investing at the intersection of caregiving and femtech and fintech, and it's women focused. It's by a woman founder. When you think about the impact that these women can have on, where all of us can have, right, on putting our money into opportunities that actually like support other women in building businesses, but then also return our capital. Like that's a very powerful force that we can be. And there's this big conversation these days about this massive wealth transfer that's coming to women. It's primarily coming from men, primarily through, you know, older men who are dying and passing on their wealth to their wives, their children. Um, so then the question becomes like, what are we doing with all of these resources, right? If you look at it wasn't until recently where uh, a lot of the research having to do with women's issues, like it just wasn't tested on women, right? There's men fund things that look like and people that look like them.
Mhm.
There's percent of money going to venture capital funding. And for some people, this might seem like a whole other world of, I'm not a VC, I don't do private equity, I don't even know what that means, but it's there are gateways, right? Like I am a gateway to that world for anyone who's interested in accessing that world. And primarily I invest for returns and also for impact. If you can have both, amazing. I don't just invest in female founders. Um, but investing in something, right? And the women that I tend to work with are beyond the budgeting, clearing debt conversation. We're more in the impact and like growing wealth beyond, right? Where like we've amassed a certain level of wealth that's like comfortable, and then it's like, well, what else is possible, right?
Mhm.
That's the conversation that we have, and it's really around looking at your entire ecosystem of wealth building, including taxes and estates and offshore stuff and all the things. But I think for women, like we have to invest. You have to learn the language. Like we don't have to. I mean, you don't have to. You don't have to. But if you ever the people that are really good at investing have a future orientation, right? So it's like, I'm comfortable now, but I want to be comfortable 20 years from now. I want to be even more comfortable in 20 years, in 10 years, right? And those the fruits that are going to bear fruit 20 years from now are what you're planting today. And if for anyone thinking that, well, I'll invest when I have more money, or I'll invest when it's just like it's like saying, well, I'll go to the gym when I'm more fit. Like it doesn't work, right? A big part of building wealth and big wealth, and I'm talking like, 10, 20 plus million beyond, is the muscle and the being able to handle risk and being able to recognize patterns and being able to um, diligence an opportunity and know what a good deal is versus a bad deal, and not fall for scams. And um, so none of that will happen if you like. I always use the analogy of you're not gonna be able to squat your body weight if you can't squat the bar. Like you have to start somewhere. Uh, and so just start, right? In whatever it is. And then just
I
this is a very unpopular opinion, but like living within your means, I think is such an important thing, because you can't it's just like you can't out what is it? You can't out train a bad diet. You can't out earn a bad like
lifestyle.
lifestyle. At some point, it's like you get used to it. It's like you adapt, and then you need more, and then you need more, and it also it is not. People say, well, everyone wants to be a millionaire. First of all, that's not enough. So, like, if million is your bar, like you need to raise the bar significantly, right? It's enough if you're 90 and you're retiring and you have, maybe another 5 years to live. It's not if you're, in your 30s or 40s and you want to retire and sail off into the sunset. Like that's not gonna work. Just to give people some context, because I think this is the other thing that women don't really, and likely men, but I work with women, so let's just focus on that. The celebration of like I had 100K month, that's amazing and like beyond like incredible. I have never had 100K month. Um, well, not from my earned income, but so the question then becomes, okay, if you were to say, let's say you wanted to just stop and have that same, and you have a lifestyle that's 100K lifestyle, and that's what you're earning through your launches and your course sales and like whatever you're doing, right? Your active engagement. You would need a $30 million investment portfolio to support that lifestyle, right? Which is at a 4% withdrawal rate, which is kind of typical assumptions. You would have 100K months, and that would be like financial freedom. The definition of financial freedom is you're not having to work, your investments support you. That's a $30 million. Like, I think when you say that to people, they're like, oh wow. Like that's quite substantial, right? For most
Yeah.
people. And
And I
so
I
yeah,
always say, like, it's not the million you're after, it's the feeling that you think it's gonna give you. And then it's the same thing, like, let's say you left a night, quote, unquote, "9 to 5" corporate job to start a business, and you're like, you realize you just created another prison for yourself, and you're not in this feeling or state of freedom more often than not. Like, yeah, you're gonna sprinkle in some risk and fear and all of that, but you got yourself in the exact same situation. And so it's like, it's never gonna be enough for you. You have to think differently. You have to use your critical thinking skills and problem solving, get into different conversations. And this is why I love and I like that you're like, unpopular opinion, which is probably again why I was attracted to you because you're like, yeah, I don't believe that or I don't think about that. Like, yes, we can sprinkle in some of that. We need to understand the energetics of life, the energetics of money. But everything that you're saying, and when you went back to like talking about, I think all women need to invest, and you're like, well, if you don't want to, you don't have to. But as a statement, you need to invest. You need to invest time, you need to
yes.
invest energy, and you need to invest financial resource. That if you think 20, 30 years from now, you're going to be in exceptional health if you do no investment of time and energy, you
Mhm.
are lying to yourself. If you think 20 years from now and you start investing today, day one, financially, yeah, you're going to be in a better circumstance. So, like, and the other thing I want to reflect back that you said was people who invest, and I'm using investment, time, money, energy, are future thinkers.
Yeah.
And typically, most people are like living in the now, right? In the survival state.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how good can it get? How good can it feel? You have to be determined to get out of that survival identity of mental. Like, I understand if your core basic human needs are not being met, you're not thinking about the future. But wealthy women, abundant women, well resourced women who are investing in that time, money, and energy, like I just heard you say, if you have the privilege,
Mhm.
it is your obligation and duty to do that, to help additional women who are in that survival state, who do not have the privilege of bettering themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a real you have to be future thinking, and you also need to be okay with delayed gratification, and you actually need to have like one of the things that I think really supported me in my own wealth building journey is I never got caught up in the Joneses thing, right? Like I never got caught up in, even when I worked in an office, like wearing the latest seasonal outfits, right? Like I would always buy my stuff on sale, and they were nice. Like they were, I didn't shop at Walmart. Not that there's anything wrong with people who do that. I used to buy diapers. It's all good. Like, but you have to be like, if you're trying to keep up with somebody, then you almost have to ask yourself, like, who am I? What are my values? And am I the kind of person who is so like I think that's like a little self-esteem thing to be always trying to keep up with someone. It's like be confident in who you are, be self-assured in who you are, and you're enough. And I'm here to build wealth, and I don't frankly care what you think about that. It's just like the end, right? Like it's a um I would much rather be wealthy and emotionally free. Not that the two are always tied together, because there's lots of wealth people who are not emotionally free, but I would much rather have that than someone thinking something positive about it. Like I frankly I don't particularly care, and it's a skill. Not a skill. It's a strength, right? It's
Mhm.
like
It is a skill too. Like, it's something that you have to actively I think it's a skill when you're like, "Oh, I care too much what other people think." It's a skill, it's a habit, you have to break it. The beauty is when you get to see behind the scenes of those people, the Joneses, and you're like, "Oh, that's actually a mask. That's a
yeah.
mask to avoid other things." And we're recording this around the holidays and you just hear like around Black Friday, you just hear it over and over again, like, "Oh, the holiday is so expensive, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, I just, I've talked to my kids. I'm like, "What do you want?" And the things that they want, like, you already have it.
Mhm.
And I'm like, yeah, I don't wanna fill the tree with shit. I don't wanna
Yeah.
feel like I just it's not a value of mine. I would much rather invest in things that are going to support your future or create deeper connection in your relationships or affect your health than pile crap on from a place of obligation or trying to please this inner lack of creating the magic and just putting all this pressure on myself and then feeling resentful after. So I
Mhm.
know that this conversation, you and I could talk forever and ever, and maybe we'll have you back on. Um, where can people find more of you? Because I think we not only number one, you made my day because you cried. So just thank you. Tears are my love language. When I could crack someone who's like, I don't cry.
Don't cry. Like, I mean, I do. I would never. I mean, the previous version of me, and so this is the plug that I'll say. For coaching and doing self work, and I think it is important. Like, I recognize that I got to financial freedom by doing things. Investing and being very logical and just understanding how money worked and compounding and
Yeah.
delayed gratification and all the things. But if I want to go to the next level and it's to me now it's just more of a game than like I have to. It's just like what else is possible, right? So if I believe in constant never-ending improvement and expansion and what else is possible for me, then I get to play a different game. And to play a different game, I did invest myself in myself quite heavily to like get to that level, but I think the point that people are missing is that you don't actually need to like reinvent yourself or like recode your identity or anything like that. You take your money and you save 20 to 30% or as much as you can and you invest it, and then compounding is like this magical thing, and over a decade it will take that long, likely.
Yeah.
You'll have a million, and then you'll be like, "Great, now what do I want to do with my life?" Right? Without the pressure of having to do something for the money.
You know what I'll say to you though is one thing that I am learning and stepping into, and my oldest is almost 20. Um, I already warned him and I said, "You are not gonna like me when it comes to making money when you're starting to make money because I'm going to be so hell bent on you start investing as early as possible and you're going to give me so much pushback and then one day you're going to say I
Yes.
am so glad that that was a standard and I wish that my parents did that for me and it was like non-negotiable. I actually used to work for my father, like I worked for a family business and it just wasn't a thing. We didn't have those conversations. We didn't do that. And there's no anger or resentment there, but it's always like, I'm like, become the adult that you wanted as a child, that you needed. Be that leader. Yeah, they're going to give you pushback. There's going to be resistance, but you're doing it for the greater good. And so be that now. Be it today. Choose it today. So, Juliana, where can people find more of you?
On so I think the best place is just like on Instagram. So it's Juliana, Juliana Uto, would be the best place to go, and you can pop in my DMs if you have any questions about this conversation or wealth building or investing in general. I'm happy to answer them.
Awesome. And so I'm just going to spell your name slower. JULIANA_UTO.
Yes.
Okay. I always tell people take a screenshot of this episode, tag us. Yeah, always send a DM. Like, what was your biggest aha moment? That's the beauty of the internet is access to these conversations, and it's what you do with these conversations that will change the trajectory of your life. So, Juliana, I'm so grateful I found you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you.